Have you ever wondered what it's really like to summit the deadliest mountain on Earth? Because K2 is called the Savage Mountain for a reason. Located in the Karakoram Range on the border of Pakistan and China, K2 is so remote that reaching its base camp alone requires days of trekking through rugged terrain, far from roads, towns, or medical facilities. At over 8,600 meters, or 28,000 feet, it is the second highest mountain in the world. But it's far more dangerous than Everest. For every 4 people who reach the top, 1 doesn't make it back alive. In this video, we'll see all the obstacles that must be overcome to reach the summit, and we'll see why climbing K2 is much more dangerous than you think. The journey begins at base camp, which is about 5,000 meters high. Even here, the air is thinner than at sea level, and walking can make you feel a bit sleepy. It's freezing cold, and you're surrounded by huge glaciers and snowy mountains. First, to get to Camp 1, you have to cross glaciers full of massive cracks called crevices. These cracks can be very deep and are often hidden under snow, so every step you take may be your last. To stay safe, you decide to tie yourself to ropes with other climbers. As you move higher, the mountain begins to show its dangerous side. Strong winds whip across the slopes, and avalanches can strike without warning, sweeping away everything in their path. You have to stay alert and move carefully. After Camp 1, the climb gets steeper and harder. You have to use ropes to pull yourself up icy walls and cross narrow, snowy paths. One of the hardest parts is House's Chimney, a narrow and steep rock section. Here, climbers need to use their hands, feet, and climbing tools to get up. As you climb higher, your muscles are starting to let go. Even small movements, like drinking water or fixing your gloves, now feels exhausting. Carrying your gear makes it even harder. After 8 long hours, you finally see the distant tents of Camp 2. After a short night of sleep, you decide to make your way to Camp 3. The weather is colder and windier here, and frostbite becomes a big danger for your fingers, toes, and face. If you're not careful, the cold can permanently damage your body. Suddenly, you see a silhouette in the distance, but as you get nearer and nearer, it slowly disappears. You realize that you just had a hallucination. This is one of the symptoms of what we call altitude sickness. It is a state where your body is struggling with the lack of oxygen. You can feel extremely nauseous, and you can slowly lose your mind. Because of altitude sickness, many people cannot come to their senses and have to turn back. But let's say you're different and you manage to get to Camp 3. From Camp 3, you head towards Camp 4. The climb starts with the Black Pyramid, a steep and rocky section covered in ice. It's tough to climb, and you need to be very careful because the rocks can break or slip. You have now entered the Death Zone. The Death Zone is the part of the mountain above 8,000 meters, where there's so little oxygen that your body starts to break down. At this point, you have to use oxygen tanks in order to stay alive. The weather at this altitude is brutal, with freezing temperatures that can drop to minus 40 degrees, and sudden storms can trap you. The final climb to the summit begins in the middle of the night. You leave Camp 4 in the dark using a headlamp to see. The cold is intense, and the wind cuts through your clothes. After a couple of hours, you encounter the deadliest part of the ascent, the bottleneck, a narrow path surrounded by giant blocks of ice called seracs. These seracs can fall without warning, making this section extremely dangerous. As you get closer to the summit, you see dead bodies on the mountain slope. You do not see any of them fully. Some bits of human anatomy are emerging out of the snow. The atmosphere gets heavier. The idea of death gets more realistic, as if death itself was around you, watching your every move. But after hours of effort, you finally reach the top. The view is incredible, with mountains stretching as far as you can see. For a moment, all the fear and pain disappear. You made it. But the climb isn't over yet. Most people lose their life on the way down. You'll be tired, and it's easy to make mistakes. The only way to survive is to get down as quickly as possible. Now you understand why climbing K2 is one of the hardest and most dangerous things you can do. It pushes your body and mind to their limits. To this day, less than 400 people have ever reached the summit of K2, making it the most difficult mountain to climb in the world. But K2 is not just for climbers anymore. It's slowly becoming a tourist destination. Just look at what's happening on Mount Everest, for example. Mass tourism has overcrowded the mountain, with long lines of climbers waiting to reach the summit. This has caused more accidents and more deaths. So the real danger on Everest now isn't just the mountain, it's people. Right now, K2 is still clean and not crowded because it's harder to reach and climb. But more people are starting to visit, and that could be dangerous. K2 doesn't have the same support as Everest, and overcrowding here would make it even deadlier. If you appreciate this video, you can support our work by subscribing to our YouTube channel. This will help us create better educational content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on another journey.